Guys, welcome back. We're going some more shorter videos on specific netcode topics. And this week, talk about RPCs and how they've changed recently-ish. So if you've used netcode for GameObjects in the past, you might be familiar with server RPCs and client RPCs. And RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call. So these are basically functions that will get called locally, client or a server, but it will be executed remotely on the server if it's called by the client, vice versa, clients if it's called by servers. So before, they were two separate attributes that you had. Have a server RPC that you would tag as a server RPC, and vice versa for the client RPCs. In 1.8, introduced a combined attribute just called RPC. So you no longer have to have two functions in order to communicate back and forth between clients and servers. So this will work in both client server mode and distributed authority, even though in distributed authority there are no central servers. You can still send RPCs. This graphic here is kind of a leftover from the older docs when they were two separate functions, basically. So when you declare an RPC, you just have this RPC attribute, and then you have to give it a target where to send it to. And this can be either a built-in target, or there are also custom targets as well. When you're creating an RPC, you just have to make sure that the RPC has RPC at the end of action. And they all need to have a send to attribute as well. There's other attributes we can set here. We'll go over that in just a bit. So what you can do with RPCs is this is a way of sending data across the network. We'll go over like network variables and custom messages, the other two ways you can send data across the network in separate videos. But in this one, in this ping RPC here, you are just sending this int value, which will be sent to the server. So anything in the parameters here will get serialized and then sent across the network. Serialization is another topic that we'll go over as well, but by default, all of the primitive types you can send over, your ints, floats, bools. It'll even support strings, but most of the value types will just automatically be serialized and sent over. You can do custom structs as well, that if you want to serialize more complex data, that as well. Just need to be careful just to keep bandwidth in mind when sending RPCs. You want to keep these as small as possible. So this is just saying that if it doesn't have the RPC at the end, this will throw an error message, basically, because you want to know that this is going to be a remote function. There's a list of all of the built-in send to types that you can send to. So if it's sending to server, or you can send it to not the server. These will only work in your client server mode. Since in distributed authority, there is no centralized server, you can't just send it to a server there. But if you want to send it to the authority, so whichever object is the authority over this network object, it will send it to that client. This is kind of the way that it will work with both client server and distributed authority. So I would recommend using send to authority instead of send to server, just because that works both ways. It's another thing to specify is that RPCs have to be on network objects. They have to be spawned, and the RPCs themselves have to be in a network behavior. If they're not spawned, they're not on a network behavior, then it won't actually send across the network. We also can send it to the owner or not the owner if you some like area effect stuff. You can send it to yourself if you want to execute RPC locally, or you can send it to everyone but yourself. You can send to everyone, which it will send to clients and servers, or you can send it to clients and hosts if you don't have a dedicated server. Or there is this send to specified in parameters. And this is so you can specify targets in the RPC params. So if you set it to this, or there's another parameter you can have called allowed target override, set that to be true, then you can specify targets in the RPC params in order to send it to whatever you want to set it to dynamically. Here are custom targets that you can send to. So if you want to send it to just a single client, you can do it's RPC target.single. Then you specify the client ID to use. And there is the target use type, which is either temp or persistent. If it is temp, then it will get allocated. Yeah, it says here it will not hit the garbage collector if you use temp. So for most of your use cases, this will be what you want to use. If you have a group of clients that you consistently want to send to, you can use the persistent, so it won't automatically generate targets every time you want to send it to. Like if you have a team chat or something like that, you might want to use the persistent use type. Okay. There's some other parameters that you can set. You can set the delivery by default. The delivery is set to reliable, so it will automatically try to resend it if a packet gets dropped. But if you are sending, say, like move data to the server every frame, you might want to send that as unreliable. So network conditions don't force you to start resending things that might be old or outdated. There's also require ownership. So if you have a scene object that you might not have actual ownership over said object, since it's owned by the server, you could use this require ownership. By default, there's false now. So anyone can call an RPC on any object, even if they don't actually own it. You might want to set this to true if you are using RPCs on objects that are owned by the player. Then you don't want other players to be able to call RPCs on something that. You also have defer local. So if you are, say, sending something to everyone, by default, it will run locally on that same frame, like it was just a regular function call. You might want to defer that to the next frame, like it was sending through the network, in case you have other systems running at like the end of frame. You might want to do some processing before you execute this RPC. And then we have allow target over. Just means even if you have send to server, if you have the allow target override, then you can change that at runtime. Okay, let's actually look at some code. This is just the widget quick start. I just added a quick join button here at the top, just for ease of testing. RPC script here. So here is just a little ping example. This is going to send an RPC with no parameters to server. Server is going to take this ping count, increment it by 1, and then send this RPC, Hong RPC, back to everybody. And this is going to send this count to everybody. So what we will see here is when when the P key is pressed, it will send this RPC. We'll update the ping count on the server, and then Hong will send the C back. I'm actually doing. But the client will just print out received everybody. And we can see that here. Okay, then in my layer, same. Receive the ping, sent it. See, ping count has increased to 1 on the server. Ping count is still 0. So have a targeted RPC here that we have sent to, and this is specified in the parameters. I also have the delivery set to unreliable for no particular reason. And for this one, we are using the T key. And here we are just sending the RPC target.single, and then we just are grabbing a random client ID, and then we are sending this RPC directly to that client. So with multiple other clients, you can send to other clients, but they still go through the server. So just with a single RPC, you don't have to have a client RPC and then a server RPC to relay said message to your other clients. It just does it all in one. And in order to use this target RPC, RPC target single, this is a RPC params. And the RPC params have separate here. Is a base target, which is what we are sending it there. There's also the local defer mode could send. And if you want to know what client is sending this RPC, could see that. So we have rpcs.receive.sender client ID. This is sent whenever any RPC sent. So here, when I TC sent this. Okay, T. And sending it to client 0, and then 0 here says they targeted client 1. So yeah, that is the basics of RPCs. If you guys have any questions, definitely put them in the comments below. There. And until next time. talk about network variables, and they can also send. See you then.